Football on off the ball.
With William Hill, you can boost your winnings on the Sunday game with new Bet Builder Extra. Only with William Hill. Download the app today. 18 plus gamblingcare.ie.
This is News Talk.
You're welcome back. Now, the first weekend of the new Women's Super League season is in the books. On Friday night, Chelsea got things underway under a new regime by beating Aston Villa 1-0. On Saturday, Manchester United beat West Ham 3-0 and Brighton hammered Everton 4-0, but the main action was on Sunday because Spurs beat Palace 4-0 as well. It was a 1-1 draw between Liverpool and Leicester City, but the game we want to focus most on this evening is between Arsenal and Manchester City. It was at the Emirates Stadium and it finished 2-2. Rachel O'Sullivan of Girls on the Ball is with us on the line to look back at that. Evening, Rachel.
Good evening, how are you?
Very well. So it wasn't quite Emmanuel Adebayor scoring against Arsenal and running the whole pitch and celebrating in front of his former fans, but Vivianne Miedema scoring against Arsenal was just as much in that script, even if her celebration was a little bit more muted than Adebayor way back when.
Yes, I think it was written in the stars for her to score. To be honest, we're used to seeing Vivianne Miedema not really celebrate, so it wasn't a huge surprise that she didn't celebrate at the Emirates this time round. But, you know, she had an early opportunity and she showed what she could do early on. I think had she scored that earlier chance, it would have been blushes at Arsenal, robbed the ball off Kim Little and just put the ball wide with Manuela Zinsberger totally isolated in the box. But she did come up clutch. She got the goal back for them. And I don't think it was any surprise. I think everyone knew she was going to score. Like, it was just written.
I hadn't realised this because obviously Arsenal played so much at the Emirates in recent years, but they never actually played Manchester City at the Emirates until the weekend. And reading between the lines here, was playing them at Meadow Park, a narrower pitch down through the last couple of seasons, was that just convenient for Arsenal? And finally they've stepped up to the Emirates at the weekend, albeit a place where they might be a little bit more vulnerable to a team like Man City.
That's a good point. I never really thought of that. That's potentially a reason why they haven't done it. I think the fact now that they're having at least 8 of their league games at the Emirates this season, you know, you're going to end up playing Man City there. I think they've played so many now that they probably felt an awful lot more comfortable on that pitch. So perhaps didn't necessarily need that advantage of playing at Bournemouth against them. They certainly looked, you know, relatively comfortable in terms of pitch size against Manchester City at the weekend. I don't think that was something that City necessarily were able to exploit. So yeah, maybe it was always going to happen. And I think, I guess this season with the increase in numbers, you know, you're going to get, you know, you can't open a league against Manchester City with Vivianne Miedema coming back and not have it at the Emirates. So it's no real surprise.
No, absolutely not. I do wonder if Arsenal are looking at this season, and there does seem to be this expectation that it's Manchester City's time to go and win the league, that I'm not sure how put out Arsenal are by that talk or how much they actually listen to it, but there's a good opportunity for them to create something of a siege mentality here, that everybody's tipping Manchester City to go on and actually win this thing.
Yeah, potentially, but I do think there is pressure on Arsenal. I think there's an expectation on the team to start winning big trophies. I appreciate they've had the Conti Cup twice in a row, but you know, I think they need to start coming up with an FA Cup or a league for all the talent and money that's been spent and that they've brought in at the squad and the big decisions that have been made. I think fans want to see fruits of that. You know, and there's been some fans have been unsure about some of the decisions made or some of the players that have been allowed to be let go. So yeah, I think everyone is kind of saying this could be Man City's time. Maybe Arsenal can use that to their advantage, but I do think there is pressure on the team.
When it comes to Katie McCabe's performance on Sunday, it was like brilliant performance, obviously, but it's quite interesting in the position that she was playing. Obviously, when Catley's back in the team, who knows what that's going to be. Was this as much to do with the fact that they were up against very strong opposition, that it was a very defensive positioned Katie McCabe, or what's the outlook for her this season?
I think she played well because it was, yes, she had to do more defending, but I think Man City were much more open against them. It wasn't like they were playing up against a team that has bedded in a bit like Häcken during the week at the Champions League. And it's the kind of team, when a team banks down like that, Arsenal struggle. And I think, you know, we often see Katie McCabe coming up higher in those situations, just sending balls and sending crosses in. And that hasn't been working very well for Arsenal. I think the fact that Man City came to play, weren't sitting back, allowed her to utilise both her defensive skill set, but also come up higher up the pitch. We saw her sending in some really really good pinpoint crosses. I think having the way they were playing Stina Blackstenius, giving them that target up front, allowed her to spray some of those passes. Mariana Caldente almost lobbed the goalkeeper. There were some really nice passes coming in from the fullbacks and from the defenders. So I think actually because Man City weren't kind of sitting back, it was a better game for her to play, and she was still able to come back and put in those really important blocks and recovery tackles that we know her for. So I think she was able to utilise both sides of her game. And
then against a team who will sit back, is she going to get the best out of herself in that position, or where do you think she'll play?
I think she'll start again. I think with Catley still coming back into the team, I'll be intrigued to see how Arsenal come up against Häcken again this week, and how they manage that low block. She will be key to that because they need someone who's able to take strikes. The other thing I want to see from Katie McCabe is her having shots from outside the box. Arsenal aren't doing enough of that. I think that's an area that they're struggling with. They're trying to walk the ball into the goal at times, and that's something that McCabe has in her locker. So I'd like to see more of that, as well as her ability to send in those aerial balls that are so good, and crosses and corners as well that we've seen from her. So I think the wider team has struggled against these low blocks. It's not just been her. I think it's a real test now for them on Wednesday. I think maybe Sunday will have helped them because they've been able to play a bit more freer football. But I think the fact that they're still not putting those opportunities away might weigh on them slightly, and that's a concern, I think, for a lot.
The assist for the equaliser will go down in her highlight reel for the season already. Katie McCabe, the level of disrespect just needs to be applauded, right?
That was other than Miedema maybe scoring on her return, I think that was one of the highlights of the game, and was a proper Katie McCabe piece of footage. There's arguments over whether it was a foul or whether it was not a foul. I don't think it was that controversial. I think it not being given, or had it been given, you wouldn't really argue either way. But I did really appreciate her ability to just ignore the two players and heap on the ground, lob the ball over them and carry on and set up that assist, the assist, as you say. It could have been an assist to the goal had it not, come across the crossbar. But it was a peak Katie McCabe moment.
A moment of appreciation for Jess Park's goal, already contender for goal of the season?
I thought it was a good goal. I thought it was maybe overblown about it being goal of the season, personally. I thought the speed at which she took the ball and made the decision to shoot was excellent. For such a young player, she had barely a minute to think when the ball kind of popped out to her. But I think I was there watching it, there wasn't a huge amount of speed on the goal. So to watch the goalkeeper kind of rooted to the spot, watch it go in the same way I did and not make any move toward it, I think, didn't help the situation. But yeah, the way it clipped the crossbar, it was a lovely goal and a lovely way for them to go ahead. But for me, I wouldn't go quite there yet with goal of the season.
Fair enough. There's a lot of football to be played as well. So when we look at what we can take from, the first heavyweight showdown of the season, maybe the way to frame this question is, what will Chelsea have learned from seeing their two main rivals going toe-to-toe on Sunday?
Well, if I look at it this way, first of all, out of the two who'd be happier with that result in terms of Man City, Arsenal, you'd think Man City, based on how Arsenal did last season against the top teams, right? They took a lot of points off the top teams. And that was something Arsenal were good at, was when they were put up against these bigger teams, your Chelsea's, your Man Cities, they did well against them, getting the wins over City. So I think City will be pleased that they got the draw out of that. They will be annoyed they didn't win it, but I think they'll be happier of the two. And I think that's something Chelsea might look at, the fact that Arsenal didn't put the game to bed. And that's something that they can exploit. Now, I think previously under Emma Hayes, she would sacrifice a style of play to get the win. So if she had to do something we're never going to see Chelsea low block, but if she can do something to aggravate Arsenal where she knows they're weak, she'd do it for the sake of getting the win. I don't know whether that's something Sonia Bonpastor is willing to do. So that will be an interesting thing when she does come up against those two sides.
What do we expect the biggest change from Hayes to Bonpastor to be for Chelsea, certainly in a stylistic point of view?
Maybe the fact that she's maybe less willing to sacrifice a style of play. It was kind of hard to judge on that first game against Aston Villa because you were looking at a new Aston Villa side as well. So it was kind of hard to judge almost a like-for-like Chelsea versus Aston Villa. Two new managers, both finding their feet. First game of the season, there's going to be first game nerves as well. And I think even from the Chelsea players who maybe played last season, that wasn't what they would have expected from an Aston Villa. So that was something that they had to wrap their heads around as well. I think they'll want to be looking to be more clinical. You know, we are seeing an attacking style of football, which we'd expect from Chelsea and from Sonia Bonpastor. But I think they'll be frustrated at their lack of finishing. That can be put down to the fact, though, that it was the first game of the season, that you do have a number of new players in the squad trying to build those relationships. You know, they still look a frightening prospect that first 10, 15 minutes. They look like the Chelsea of old. And I'll be intrigued to see around kind of player positions and who she picks for games. She's a lot of star quality, so they will be difficult decisions for her.
Just to circle back to Arsenal again, and you mentioned the Häcken game, which they obviously lost the first leg of 1-0. Once again, they face a pretty early crossroads in their season, certainly in the context of European football this season. Thursday night is a huge night for Arsenal.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's something that could influence how the rest of the season goes. You know, it could, if they get knocked out again, it could be problematic for Jonas Eidevall. I don't think it'll be problematic early. I don't think it's something that they're going to make some rash decision on. But I do think, you know, it's his team now. It's his fourth season. He's got the players in that he wants. They're playing the way he wants them to play. They're still having similar issues. And he talked a lot about progress in his pre-match press conference. But there has to be a point where that progress leads to something. And I think that's where the frustrations lie with the fans, is that, you know, he talks about progress, but right, this season, if they get knocked out again, that's not progress. And I think that will be a worry for them. And that will be playing on their minds as well, because there'll be the fear that they're going to come up against a Häcken that sit back again. And that's not necessarily the way they normally play. Häcken, but I think they obviously identified it was something that Arsenal would struggle with. So yeah, it's a big match, big pressure match, and I think if they drop out of the Champions League again before the group stages, it could be a problem come the end of the season, especially when it comes to bringing and signing in new players. Yeah, for sure. So that's Thursday night, massive game for Arsenal, and then just one other one on Manchester City. Tara O'Hanlon wasn't in the squad at the weekend. She's coming back from injury. She's obviously been touted as potentially the next great Irish WSL hope. When do you expect to be able to see her, and what are your expectations for her this season when she's fully fit and available? To be honest, it's hard to know under Gareth Taylor, because we don't often see a lot of young players getting a lot of minutes. You know, I think of someone like a Ruby Mace, who sat on the bench for a long time, went to Manchester City. We all wondered, had she maybe gone too early in her career? So I do hope she gets minutes, perhaps in some of the League Cup matches or early FA Cup round matches. We might get to see her and get to see what she can do. But there is a slight concern for me about when some youngsters are getting to the Man City squad and whether they'll actually get game time or much game time. Perhaps it could be a situation of going out on loan to get a bit more experience, which could be beneficial as well. So we'll see, but it's just hard to tell when they're playing at such a big club. Rachel, we are unfortunately right out of time. We did want to get your take on Manchester United. I did want to get your take on the new Barclays sponsorship of the WSL. We'll have to come back to that, but I'll leave you with one very quick question that I really wanted to ask you. With that Barclays sponsorship, who is the most likely candidate to be tagged with the hashtag Barclays Women? God, that is a tough question. I don't know. Has anyone else given you answers already? No, I haven't. It's just in the aftermath of the Barclays Men saga on Twitter over the past couple of weeks, I was thinking who is the most likely, who's a WSL answer to Ivan Campo or Morgan Gams Pedersen? Could well be Katie McCabe, to be fair. It is Katie McCabe, is what Nick is saying. To be fair, maybe you've picked one there yourself. I think that's actually not a bad shout. Rachel, great stuff. We'll catch up again soon. Thank you. Thanks so much. Bye-bye. Cheers. It's Rachel O'Sullivan of Girls in the Ball. We'll be back in just a sec.
Football on Off the Ball.
With William Hill, you can boost your winnings on every game with new Bet Builder Extra. Only with William Hill. Download the app today. 18 plus gamblingcare.ie.
This